If you love intense HFY stories where humanity turns fear into strength, hit like and subscribe so you never miss the next battle. Your support helps this channel bring you more powerful sci-fi stories full of emotion, strategy, and unforgettable human moments. Concord Station looked peaceful from the outside, which Adrian Cross always found suspicious. It hung between Valorian and Dravik space like a polished silver promise. All curved windows, white docking arms, quiet garden decks, and ceremonial lights bright enough to make everyone forget how many warships were parked beyond sensor range. The summit was supposed to begin in 20 minutes. Human delegation banners had already been placed beside Valorian blue and Dravik black in the central chamber. Admiral Helena Marr would lead the human side. Beside her sat Admiral Cassian Holt, who disliked waiting, and Commander Ilan Reyes, who had been quietly reviewing treaty language since breakfast. Adrian was not there to negotiate. He was there because neutral summit planners liked having humans near exits, crowd control routes, backup shelters, and anything that might become ugly if politics failed. His official role was Emergency Response Commander. In plain language, if the station panicked, he was expected to make sure panic had somewhere to go. The first delay seemed ordinary. A Valorian aide approached Admiral Marr as the final seating checks began and said, "Commanders Voss, Thorne, and Hale have been requested in Briefing Room 12 for a last-minute route verification." Marr looked toward Adrian, then back to the aide. "By whose office?" "Summit Security Coordination," the aide answered. "It concerns royal transit timing." Commander Rhea Voss, Commander Malik Thorne, and Commander Soren Hale exchanged the tired look of officers who knew last-minute meetings were usually just paperwork wearing urgency. Thorne muttered, "Of course it does." Voss stood. "We'll be back before opening remarks." Hale collected his comm slate and followed. No one panicked. No one had reason to. Briefing rooms existed. Route changes happened. Royal delegations caused schedule problems as naturally as engines caused heat. 12 minutes later, they had not returned. Admiral Marr noticed before anyone said it aloud. She was good that way. Her eyes moved once to the empty human seats, then to Adrian. "Cross," she said quietly. He stepped closer. "Admiral, find them. Nothing dramatic. They are probably arguing over corridor priority with someone who thinks uniforms make maps simpler." Holt leaned back in his chair. "Or Thorne is insulting their protocol and has been detained by furniture." Reyes did not look up from the treaty slate. "Briefing Room 12 is one level below the East Royal Corridor." Adrian nodded. "I'll bring them back or bring back the reason." Marr's voice lowered. "Do not create a second problem." "Understood," Adrian said. He meant it. At that point it was still a missing officer errand, not a crisis. He left the chamber through the service-side exit because it was faster, and because main diplomatic corridors were full of people trying very hard to be seen. The lower access hallway was quieter. Too quiet perhaps, but not enough to matter yet. Concord Station had layers like any diplomatic structure. Bright halls for flags, narrow routes for workers, hidden passages for security, and old utility spaces that survived because nobody wanted to pay to redesign them. Adrian walked with one hand near his sidearm but not on it. He passed two Valorian technicians arguing over a lift schedule, one Dravik camera crew whispering by a sealed gate, and a human catering contractor carrying empty thermal trays. Normal details, useful details, nothing that gave him permission to worry. Then he saw two human soldiers standing near a restricted service gate. They were not part of his emergency response team. Their armor was human-made but plain, without summit identification bands, private military pattern. That was unusual, not illegal. One of them checked the corridor twice in 5 seconds. That was unusual in a different way. A third human came from the royal side passage at a fast walk, almost running, and stopped close enough for Adrian to hear him say, "The Prince route moved. Section 6, we go now." The two soldiers straightened at once. Adrian slowed beside a wall terminal as if reading the evacuation map. He did not know what the Prince's normal movement plan looked like. He did not know if Section 6 was forbidden, approved, or ceremonial. But he knew how real security spoke under pressure. This sounded rehearsed and panicked at the same time. Adrian stepped away from the terminal and approached them calmly. "You three attached to Summit Route Control." The nearest soldier turned his helmet just enough to study him. "Temporary support," Adrian nodded, as if that explained anything. "Amber fallback if royal movement is blocked." The answer came quickly. Public atrium hold under visual cover. It was not nonsense. That made it more dangerous. It sounded like something pulled from an older manual. The current plan Adrian had reviewed that morning said all royal movement collapsed inward to hardened shelter, never outward to public space. He kept his face neutral. Good, he said. Just confirming. The soldiers moved through the service gate. Adrian let the door almost close before catching it with his palm and following at a distance. The passage curved toward the royal guest wing. Voices grew clearer ahead. 4 Valorian guards stood outside an unmarked suite door, alert but not alarmed. The human soldiers approached like they were expected. That was what made the first second work. The guards did not raise weapons. The soldiers did. Suppressed shots cracked in a tight rhythm. 2 guards fell before their rifles cleared the sling. A blade took the third under the jaw. The fourth reached for the alarm panel and died against it. Adrian's pistol came up, but he held fire for half a breath. Closed door. Unknown child inside. 3 attackers between him and the suite. A bad shot now could finish their work for them. The lead human placed a compact charge on the door seam. Fast entry, he said. Alive only if clean. The charge flashed. The door burst inward. Something bright flew out from inside and detonated near the floor. A flash device. 2 attackers staggered blind. A small figure darted through the smoke, silver-cloaked and quick, driving a narrow blade into one soldier's thigh before twisting free. Prince Oren Vel was younger than Adrian expected and far better trained than a ceremonial child should have needed to be. The wounded soldier cursed and swung his rifle toward him. Adrian fired. The soldier dropped. The second turned toward Adrian and died before he finished the motion. The third, half blind and bleeding, stumbled back into the corridor and ran. Oren froze in the smoke, blade shaking in his hand. He saw the dead Valorian guards, the dead human attackers, and Adrian standing with a smoking pistol. His face emptied into fear. Humans are attacking me, the prince whispered. Adrian lowered his weapon slightly, keeping his voice level. Some are, he said, not all. Then station alarms began to scream. The prince did not run at first. That was what Adrian noticed later, when there was time to think about fear with less smoke in his lungs. Oren Vel stood in the ruined doorway with a blade in one trembling hand and one shoulder turned toward the wall. The way trained children were taught to make themselves smaller without looking weak. His eyes kept moving between Adrian's face, the dead Valorian guards, and the 2 human bodies on the floor. Stay where you are, Oren said. His voice tried to be royal and came out young. Adrian lowered his pistol another inch but did not holster it. Your Highness, I need you away from this corridor before more people arrive and make bad decisions quickly. Oren's fingers tightened on the blade. You are human. Yes, they were human. Adrian glanced at the dead mercenaries. Unfortunately, yes. Then why should I trust you? Adrian heard boots from the far passage. Too many to be friendly and too fast to be routine. You should not, he said. You should move first and decide later. That was the wrong answer, or maybe the only honest one. Oren stepped back, eyes flashing with fresh panic. No, Adrian took one careful step forward. I am not taking you anywhere public. Public is where witnesses get confused and cameras get edited. The prince did not understand all of that, but he understood enough to hate the sound of it. Behind Adrian, one of the wounded human attackers groaned and reached weakly toward his dropped comm. Adrian crossed the space, kicked the comm away, and checked the man's pulse without lowering his guard. Who sent you? He asked. The man smiled through blood. You did. Adrian's face did not move. That will be difficult to put in my report. The man laughed once and coughed red across his chin. Oren saw the exchange, saw Adrian standing over another human with a weapon, and made his decision. He threw the small royal blade at Adrian's chest, not with enough force to kill, but with enough accuracy to make him twist aside. Then the prince ran. Adrian swore under his breath and went after him. He could have caught the boy in an open hall, but Concord Station was not giving him open halls. It gave him curved passages, service doors, panicked alarms, and diplomatic architecture designed by people who had never chased a terrified prince through it. Oren was fast, and worse, he knew which doors accepted royal palm codes. Twice Adrian turned a corner just in time to see a door sealing behind silver fabric. Your Highness, he called, keeping his voice low, running toward unknown security during a false attack is not a strategy. Oren shouted back from somewhere ahead, neither is following me. It is a terrible strategy. Adrian admitted. But it is the one currently available. Above them, the summit meeting began without the three missing commanders. Admiral Helena Marr noticed the empty seats again just as Queen Regent Selara Vel took her place at the head of the crescent table. Admiral Cassian Holt leaned toward her. Cross should have reported by now. Commander Ilan Reyes kept his eyes on the treaty slate, but his jaw had tightened. Station alerts just shifted from maintenance to security. Across the chamber, Admiral Tharos Kell received a message from one of his officers and went very still. Selara saw it instantly. Speak. Tharos looked toward the human side. There has been an incident near the royal guest wing. Marr stood slowly. Define incident. Before Tharos could answer, Lord Cale Vorn entered from the side door with two guards behind him and a face arranged into controlled horror. The prince is missing, he said. Velorian guards are dead. Human armed personnel were seen at the scene. Holt stood so fast his chair struck the floor. Careful. Cale did not look at him. 3 human commanders are still absent from this chamber. A 4th, Adrian Cross, has left his post. Marr's voice cut cold through the room. He left because I sent him to find the others. Tharos's hand moved to his sidearm. Then perhaps he found the prince instead. In the lower station, Oren reached a brighter corridor and nearly ran into 4 Velorian soldiers. Relief crossed his face so openly that Adrian felt the next disaster before it happened. Help me, Oren said, breathless. Humans attacked my room. The soldiers looked at him. They did not bow. They did not use his emergency title. One of them said, "Come with us, Prince." Adrian stopped at the corner, half concealed by a pillar, and watched. Oren hesitated. Good, Adrian thought. Fear had not erased his training. The lead soldier extended a hand too slowly, too carefully, as if reaching for something fragile that he intended to break elsewhere. Your mother is waiting. Oren took one step back. Where is First Shield Varos? The soldier's expression did not change, but his answer came too late. Securing the upper hall. Adrian had reviewed the royal movement chart that morning. Varos had been dead outside the prince's room less than 5 minutes ago. The soldier raised his rifle before Oren could run again. Adrian fired from the corner and hit the weapon arm. The shot spun the soldier sideways. The others reacted fast. Real training, not panic. Adrian dropped behind the pillar as energy fire chewed white scars across the wall. Oren threw himself flat with more discipline than most adults managed under fire. Adrian called Prince left side service recess. Now, this time Oren obeyed. Not trust yet. Survival. Adrian shot one soldier through the knee joint, drove another back with 2 controlled rounds, then closed distance before the last could angle toward the prince. The fight lasted seconds and felt longer because every mistake had a child behind it. When it was done, Adrian was breathing hard. One sleeve burned, and Oren was crouched in the service recess staring at him with a new kind of fear. Not the fear that Adrian was the enemy. The fear that Adrian might be the only thing between him and everyone who was. Why are my own soldiers trying to kill me? Oren whispered. Adrian checked the corridor before answering. Because someone wants the galaxy to believe humans already did. Adrian did not wait for the prince to accept the answer. Acceptance was a luxury for safe rooms, and the corridor had already proven it was not one. He pulled the dead soldier's comm tag from the collar plate, checked the frequency burst, and found 3 channels running under Velorian encryption with no royal clearance stamp attached. That told him the rebel side of the operation was inside the station network, but not completely inside the royal command chain. It was useful, not enough. Oren was still crouched in the service recess, breathing too fast, trying very hard not to look like a frightened child. Adrian kept his voice low. Can you walk? Oren swallowed. I am not injured. That is not what I asked. The prince glared at him with the last scraps of royal pride he could find. I can walk. Adrian nodded. Good, stay close. If I say down, you go down. If I say stop, you stop. If I say run, you do not ask where. Oren's eyes flicked to the human bodies behind them. And if I say no, Adrian checked the next hallway. Then I carry you and neither of us enjoys it. They moved through a side maintenance route that smelled of cooling fluid and old metal. Oren knew enough about the station to be useful, but not enough to be safe. He could open certain royal passages, name several ceremonial lifts, and identify the color codes for guest-level security. He did not know which doors could be locked from the outside, which vents carried sound, or how easy it was to funnel a scared person toward a camera. Adrian knew those things. That was the only reason they were still alive. Twice he stopped Oren from taking routes that looked open. Once he killed the lights in a junction and watched a patrol pass through the brighter corridor ahead without seeing them. The prince whispered, "How did you know?" Adrian answered, "People hunting children like easy paths." Oren flinched at the word children. "I am heir to the Valorian dominion. Currently," Adrian said, "you are a small person in expensive clothes being hunted by professionals. We can restore the rest later." That insult should have angered him. Instead, it steadied him. Oren's breathing slowed. He walked closer, still not touching, still not trusting fully, but no longer trying to escape at every turn. They reached a storage annex full of diplomatic display stands and folded ceremony banners. Adrian closed the door most of the way and gave himself 10 seconds to examine the burned line across his sleeve. The shot had grazed skin. Not dangerous, just painful enough to be annoying. Oren saw it and looked away. "You were hit, I noticed, because of me." Adrian looked at him. "Because someone fired at me." "Keep responsibility where it belongs." The prince said nothing. Then after a moment he asked, "Are the other humans part of this?" Adrian understood the question beneath the question. "Some humans are. The ones I shot were. The people I came with are not." "How can you know?" "Because if Admiral Mar wanted a kidnapping, it would not look this badly organized." Oren stared at him. "That is your proof?" "No," Adrian said. "That is my irritation. Proof comes later." The proof almost arrived in the shape of another trap. A soft knock came from the far annex door, followed by a Valorian voice. "Prince Oren, this is Lieutenant Varys of Inner Escort. We have been sent by your mother." Oren moved before Adrian caught his wrist. Hope was faster than training. Adrian put one finger to his lips. The voice came again. "Your Highness, we know the human commander forced you through this sector. We can protect you." Oren whispered. "Varys served my mother." Adrian whispered back. "Did he use your emergency title?" The prince froze. The voice outside continued, softer now. "Open the door. We do not have much time." Adrian shifted toward the side wall. "Ask him something." Oren's throat moved. Then he called out, "What is the mourning name of my house?" Silence answered for half a second too long. Then the voice said, "Oren, this is not the time." The prince's face changed. "Not into fear this time, into hurt. He would know," he whispered. Adrian drew his pistol. "Then that is not Varys." The door burst inward before the last word finished. 3 figures entered in Valorian armor, and 2 more held the corridor behind them. Not human mercenaries this time. Local rebels. The first raised a stun net toward Oren. Adrian fired through the net emitter and shattered it. The second came in low with a curved blade. Oren moved on instinct, not away, but sideways, just enough to draw the attacker's line off Adrian. Good training, dangerous bravery. Adrian caught the blade arm, drove the soldier into a display stand and fired once into the armor seam. Another rebel slammed into him from behind. They hit the floor hard. Adrian's pistol skidded away. The prince stood 5 steps from it. For 1 second he froze. Then he kicked it back toward Adrian instead of picking it up. Smart. Adrian grabbed it and rolled, firing upward as the rebel tried to bring a rifle down on him. The corridor team opened fire through the broken doorway. Adrian dragged Oren behind a fallen display case as bright shots cut across the annex. Wood, metal, and ceremonial glass burst around them. "You said stay close," Oren said, voice shaking. "This is close." Adrian pressed his shoulder against the case. "Good listening. You are bleeding. Also good observation." One rebel pushed through the smoke. Oren reached into his sleeve and threw a second flash bead. This one was smaller, weaker, but enough. Light cracked white. Adrian stood into it, blind on one side and shot by memory at center mass. The rebel fell. The last 2 retreated, not beaten, just unwilling to die in a room that had stopped being simple. Adrian did not chase them. He locked the annex door with a broken display rod and sagged against the case. The prince stared at him differently now, still afraid, but the shape of it had changed. "You could have left me," Oren said. Adrian reloaded with hands that were not as steady as he wanted. "Yes, why didn't you?" Adrian looked toward the blocked door, where the rebels were already regrouping somewhere beyond the smoke. "Because scared people run badly," he said. "Someone has to keep up." The annex door did not hold for long, and Adrian knew it would not. It had been built to display diplomatic gifts, not stop trained soldiers with cutting tools. He took the rebel comm tag from the floor, pressed it into Prince Oren's hand and said, "If I go down, keep that. It proves they are not royal command." Oren looked at the small device as if it weighed more than his whole body. Do not say that. Adrian checked the last magazine in his pistol. That is not fear talking. That is planning. The prince's jaw tightened. My mother says planning for death invites it. Adrian looked toward the door where the cutter had begun to glow through the seam. Your mother sounds like someone who usually has more guards. Oren did not smile. Neither did Adrian. The moment for comfort was gone. They had to move. Adrian pushed open a low-maintenance panel behind the display stands and found a narrow service crawlway running under the floor. It was dusty, half-lit, and too small for armor. That made it useful. Inside, he said. Oren hesitated only once before crawling in. Adrian followed and pulled the panel shut just as the annex door gave way behind them. Boots entered, someone cursed. Another voice said they were here. The leader answered, then they are still close. The prince cannot know this level. Oren froze in the crawlway. Adrian leaned close and whispered, can you? The prince swallowed and pointed forward. This route connects to the old Oath Corridor. It was used before the station expansion. Good, it has not been used in years. Better. They moved in silence while the rebels searched the room above them. In the summit chamber, the silence had become sharper than shouting. Queen Regent Selara stood at the head of the crescent table while guards lined every exit. Admiral Helena Marr, Admiral Cassian Holt, and Commander Ilan Reyes remained under watch but not yet restrained. That distinction was political, and everyone in the room understood it might not last. Lord Cale Vorn stood beside Admiral Tharos Kell, building the accusation piece by piece. 3 human commanders are missing. Human armed personnel attacked the prince's chamber. Captain Cross was found near the royal corridor and is now absent. How much coincidence will this council accept before it calls betrayal by its name? Holt's hand curled into a fist. Marr spoke before he could. You are presenting a sequence, not proof. Cale turned to her. Your commanders were summoned to a room controlled by Summit security and then vanished. Are you claiming my station kidnapped them? Reyes finally looked up. Someone did. The question is who benefits from making it look like we did. Lieutenant Mara Keen entered with 2 Valorian guards behind her and a slate held tight in both hands. Admiral, she said to Marr, then turned to the Queen before anyone could stop her. Majesty, the missing commanders have been located. Selara's expression did not change, but her voice did. Alive? Yes. Briefing room 12. Sedated. The chamber shifted. Tharos snapped. Sedated by whom? Mara placed the slate on the table. The room logs were wiped, but the oxygen exchange records show a controlled gas drop 7 minutes before the prince's chamber was breached. Commanders Voss, Thorn, and Hale were unconscious before the attack began. Cale's eyes hardened. Human records can be forged. Mara looked at him. These are station environmental records, Reyes added quietly. And if we were planning an attack, knocking out our own commanders before it began would be an unusual tactical choice. Below, Adrian and Oren emerged from the crawlway into a forgotten corridor lined with old treaty seals worn smooth by time. The prince touched one wall and said, this passage was where the first Valorian delegate swore not to bring weapons into Concord Station. Adrian looked at the pistol in his hand. History has a sense of irony. Oren stared at him. Adrian lowered the weapon slightly. Sorry. It was the first unnecessary word he had said in several minutes, and the prince seemed to understand what it cost. They moved toward a sealed arch at the far end. Oren placed his palm on the reader. Nothing happened. He tried again. Still nothing. Power is cut, he said. Adrian stepped beside him and inspected the panel. Can this line send a signal? To the Royal Emergency Channel, maybe. Only voice. Only if the old relay still works. Try it. Oren opened the lower plate with shaking fingers and began working through the old access sequence. Adrian kept watch down the corridor. Voices carried faintly from behind them. Not close yet, but moving with purpose. The prince whispered the code once, twice, then pressed his palm to the exposed reader. The panel flickered. A thin blue light appeared. In the summit chamber above, Selara's private royal channel burst open with static. Every guard lifted a weapon. Through the broken sound came Oren's voice, small but clear enough to stop the room. Mother, Selara stepped toward the table. Oren, the prince's breath shook over the channel. The human is not the enemy. He saved me. The guards are false. Lord, the signal cracked violently. A hard pulse cut through the line and the blue light in the corridor died. Oren stared at the dead panel. She heard me. Adrian listened to the approaching boots. Enough to doubt, not enough to end it. The prince looked up at him. For the first time, he did not look like he was deciding whether to run. What now? Adrian checked the corridor behind them, then the sealed arch ahead. Now they know you can talk. So they stop trying to capture the story and start trying to end it. The first rebel shadow appeared at the far corner. Adrian stepped in front of the prince without making it dramatic. "Behind me," he said. Oren obeyed. Not because he was helpless, because now he understood what Adrian was standing there to be. The rebel shadow became 3 men before Adrian Cross finished counting the exits. 2 Valorian rebels in station armor came first, rifles high, shoulders tight. Behind them walked a human in dark combat gear without summit markings. Older than the others, calm in the way paid killers became calm after too many rooms had gone badly. Adrian recognized him as the 3rd man from the prince's corridor, the one who had escaped the first breach. The man looked at Adrian's bloodied sleeve, then at Prince Oren standing behind him. "Captain Cross," he said, "you have been difficult." Adrian kept his pistol low but ready. "I get that in performance reviews." The mercenary's mouth barely moved. "Step away from the prince." "No, you are already blamed. You are already dead in every useful version of this story." Adrian nodded once. "Then I suppose there is no reason to cooperate." Oren's fingers tightened on the back of Adrian's jacket, not hiding, not exactly, holding position. Adrian felt the movement and did not look back. The mercenary noticed it too. "Still trusting humans, Your Highness." Oren's voice came small but steady. "I trust this one." The mercenary smiled. "That will be corrected." The 2 Valorian rebels spread apart, trying to create angles. Adrian moved backward 1 step, making Oren move with him, keeping the sealed arch at their rear and the old oath corridor in front. "Bad ground, narrow and straight, but narrow meant fewer guns at once," he whispered. "When I say left, you go behind the old column." Oren whispered back, "I can help." "You can help by being alive. That is not enough." Adrian did not answer because the first rifle fired. The shot hit the wall near his shoulder and burst stone dust into the air. Adrian dropped to 1 knee and fired twice, forcing the left rebel behind a treaty pillar. The right one advanced fast. Oren moved before Adrian could stop him, throwing one of his last flash beads low across the floor. It cracked white under the rebel's visor. The man stumbled. Adrian took the opening and shot the rifle out of his hands, then drove into him shoulder first, slamming him against the wall. Pain tore through Adrian's side from an earlier hit, but he stayed close and put the man down with a hard strike to the throat seam. The mercenary captain fired through the smoke. Adrian felt heat cut across his thigh and nearly went down. Oren reached for him, but Adrian snapped, "Left." This time the prince obeyed, slipping behind the old column as the second rebel fired at the spot where he had been standing. Above them, Queen Regent Selara Vel was already moving. The broken message from her son had changed the summit chamber more completely than any argument could have. Lord Cale Vorn kept talking, but fewer people listened. Lieutenant Mara Keen stood beside the recovered environmental logs while Admiral Mar faced the Queen without lowering her eyes. "Majesty," Mar said, "if Cross had taken your son would not be calling him protector over an unsecured channel." Admiral Tharos Kell looked torn between fury and duty. "The lower oath corridor is 3 levels beneath the east wing," he said. "If the signal came from there, they are close to the diplomatic vaults." Selara turned to him. "Then stop debating and move." Cale stepped forward. "Majesty, it may be bait." Selara looked at him with a coldness that made even Holt stop breathing for a moment. "If it is bait, Lord Cale, then I will see who said it." In the oath corridor, the fight had become smaller and worse. The mercenary captain closed distance with professional patience, letting Adrian spend ammunition while the remaining rebels searched for an angle on Oren. Adrian had 3 rounds left, maybe 4 if the magazine indicator was lying kindly. His leg was bleeding now, and every shift of weight made the floor tilt. The mercenary saw it. "You are slowing," Adrian said. "You are observant. You cannot save him. You keep saying that like it will improve your aim." The rebel lunged toward Oren's column. Oren did not freeze. He kicked the old emergency relay casing loose from the wall and shoved it into the rebel's path. It was not elegant, but it tripped him for half a second. Adrian used 2 rounds and ended the threat. 1 round left. The mercenary captain raised his rifle. Adrian knew he was too slow. Oren knew it too. The prince stepped out from behind the column, not away from Adrian but closer to him. "Do not," Adrian said. Oren's face was pale. "You said scared children make bad choices." Adrian kept his eyes on the rifle. This would be one. The mercenary shifted aim toward Oren. That gave Adrian the only second he was going to get. He threw his pistol instead of firing it. It struck the mercenary's visor, not hard enough to hurt, but enough to spoil the shot. Adrian crossed the remaining space and drove both of them into the wall. The rifle discharged into the ceiling. The mercenary hit Adrian in the ribs, then again in the face. Adrian's vision flashed black. He caught the man's weapon strap, wrapped it around his forearm, and pulled down with everything left in him. Oren came from the side and drove his small royal blade into the mercenary's exposed wrist joint. The rifle fell. The mercenary punched Oren backward and raised a knife. Adrian moved without thought. He put himself between the blade and the prince. The knife went into his shoulder instead of Oren's chest. Adrian grabbed the man's armor collar and drove his forehead into the cracked visor. Once, twice. The third time the mercenary finally staggered. Adrian took the knife from his own shoulder with a sound that was almost a growl and slammed the hilt into the man's throat. The captain dropped. Adrian fell after him. Oren caught him badly, too small to hold his full weight but refusing to let him hit the floor alone. Footsteps thundered from the far end of the corridor. Royal blue lights cut through the smoke. Admiral Tharos arrived first with weapon raised. Queen Selara was behind him, eyes locked on the scene. Dead rebels, a fallen human, and her son kneeling beside him with blood on both hands. Step away from him, Tharos ordered. Oren moved closer to Adrian instead. He grabbed the torn back of Adrian's jacket and looked up at his mother. No, he said. He saved me. Selara stopped. The whole corridor stopped with her. The missing prince had been found, and he was hiding behind the human. For several seconds after Prince Oren said the words, no one moved. Admiral Tharos Kell still had his rifle raised, but the certainty had gone out of his hands. Queen Regent Selara stood behind him with royal guards filling the old oath corridor, and her eyes moved across the scene the way a ruler's eyes must, even when a mother's heart is trying to run ahead. Dead Valorian rebels. A dead human mercenary. Adrian crossed on the floor, bleeding from shoulder, thigh, and side. Her son kneeling beside him with both hands locked in the torn back of his jacket as if the human might be taken away if he let go. Selara spoke softly. Oren, the prince did not release Adrian. He was not taking me, he said. They were. The humans in the corridor were not his people. The guards were not ours. They all wanted me dead. Tharos lowered his rifle at last, and the sound of that small movement carried through the whole corridor like a verdict changing shape. Adrian tried to speak and failed the first time. Dr. Jonah Pell, the human medic attached to the emergency team, pushed past two royal guards and dropped beside him with a field kit. Do not move, Jonah said. Adrian blinked at him. I was considering dancing. Jonah pressed a seal pad hard against the shoulder wound, then canceled the performance. Oren looked stricken. Will he live? Jonah did not lie, but he did not frighten him either. He is inconveniently difficult to kill. Adrian closed his eyes for half a second. Put that in the report. Queen Selara stepped closer and lowered herself to one knee before her son, ignoring every noble and guard who could see her. Tell me from the beginning. Oren's voice shook, but he told it. The human mercenaries at his door, the false Valorian soldiers, the second group, the old corridor, the signal. Adrian standing in front of him each time when everyone else had a better reason not to. By the time Oren finished, Lieutenant Marakeen had arrived with Admiral Mar and the three recovered commanders. Rhea Voss looked pale from the sedative but steady. Malik Thorne looked furious enough to break furniture with his voice. Soren Hale was already working through comm traces on a borrowed slate. Mara handed Tharos the proof without ceremony. The three commanders were unconscious before the prince's door was breached. Their badges were copied while they were down. The human mercenary gear is private military issue, not registered summit personnel. And the Valorian rebel comm tags all route through a domestic authority channel. Tharos's face hardened. Who's? Soren looked up from the slate. Lord Kale Vorn. The name seemed to take the air out of the corridor. Selara rose slowly. Seal every exit from the summit chamber, she said. Bring him to me alive. Lord Kale tried to leave before the order reached the upper hall. He failed because Admiral Helena Mar was standing between him and the door with two human commanders who were no longer unconscious and no longer polite. Kale stopped, saw Thorne, and said, "This is a Valorian matter." Thorne's smile had no warmth. "You used human blood to write it." Royal guards entered from both sides. Kale lifted his hands, already preparing the face of offended innocence, until Mara projected the root logs across the chamber display. Sedation gas, copied badges, mercenary payment shells, rebel guard authorization, false footage without audio. The frame did not fall apart. It was taken apart piece by piece in front of every delegation in the summit. Selara entered last with Oren at her side, and Adrian being carried behind them on a medical stretcher despite his clear disapproval. Kale looked at the prince and understood that he had lost before the queen spoke. "You tried to murder my son," Selara said. "You tried to make grief into war." Kale said nothing useful. The guards took him away. The summit did not resume that night. It could not. Too much blood had been spilled beneath its polished floors, but it also did not collapse. That mattered more. The Dravic envoy, who had been blamed in the first confused minutes, stood beside Admiral Mar and Queen Selara while the corrected record was transmitted to every delegation. The war faction had wanted panic to move faster than truth. It had almost worked. It failed because one human emergency commander had followed the wrong men, asked the right quiet question, and refused to leave a frightened prince behind even after that prince ran from him. Later, in the recovery ward, Selara came alone except for Oren. Adrian was awake, pale, and annoyed by the number of tubes attached to him. The queen stood beside the bed and said, "I owe you more than apology." Adrian looked at Oren, then back at her. "Apology is enough. Better corridor planning would also be appreciated." Oren sat carefully in the chair beside the bed. "I did not hide behind you," he said. Adrian turned his head slightly. "No. You conducted a royal rear position survival maneuver." For the first time since the attack, Oren smiled. Selara watched that smile like it was something returned from very far away. "Why did you keep protecting him?" she asked. "When he did not trust you?" Adrian was quiet for a moment. "Because scared children run from the wrong people," he said. "Adults are supposed to keep up." The word stayed in the room after he finished. Outside, the ward Concord station began repairing itself. Inside, a prince who had vanished during the summit stayed beside the human everyone had blamed, and when the summit finally reconvened, Oren stood beside his mother with Adrian crossed behind him, bandaged, uncomfortable, and trusted.